Alright, so we have the HD footage of that last call out from the prejudging of the 2024 Prague Pro, brought to you by V. Karlberg Photo and the Evils Prague Pro official Instagram pages. Make sure to go and follow them on Instagram. So now we can do some analysis on what happened at this show. Based on their positions on stage, we can assume that for the judges, Martin Fitzwater and Chris Bumstead are first and second, and then Shaun, Clarida and Matthias Hollweck are third and fourth in no particular order. But let's break out all the mandatory poses and see what we can expect from the prejudging. Remember, the finals round is tomorrow. Front double biceps, Chris Bumstead is straight up winning this shot right here. He looks impeccable. What should be his biggest threat in Martin Fitzwater doesn't look up to par for a few reasons. First, at least by this last call out we're analyzing here, Martin was definitely gassed up and he wasn't able to hold the vacuum anymore, something he usually does in this pose. I also believe he wasn't as tight as we've seen him at the Olympia, for example. I actually think Matthias would be better than Martin in this pose as well, having a better flow and better separated arms. But I gotta say that I'm impressed with Shaun here. He brought back the fullness he had at the 2023 Mr. Olympia and lacked at this year's Olympia. Shaun has the worst angle in this footage while already being of a considerably lower stature than the rest of these guys, but his fullness and dryness remain unmistakable. The main takeaway from this pose for me right here is that Martin might actually be last. Make sure you let me know in the comments your thoughts. Front lat spread, and once again Chris Bumstead looks like the winner, and it's not even close this time. He indeed might have the most favorable angle in this footage, but regardless, there's no doubt that his frame and the level of fullness he's showing here make both Shaun and Martin have no hope against him, both being shorter and having narrower clavicles. Matthias again looks like he could be second in this pose, structure-wise and also conditioning-wise. Now, Martin and Clarida remain more developed when it comes to muscularity pound per pound, but overall for this pose, I would have Chris a clear first, Matthias a clear second, and then Martin and Shaun fighting to avoid last. Side chest. And the first thing I want to clear out for this pose is that Matthias looks like he's in last place this time. He doesn't have the chest thickness nor the best arms and shoulders combination, and his side leg is the least impressive in the lineup as well. As for the other three, Martin and Shaun showcase their incredible thickness, but man, look at Chris Bumstead here. He doesn't have the same level of roundness, but he's more polished, his chest has the best striations, and he showcases that wide frame as well. That I understood from Tyler Mannion that's being judged in the side poses as well. They're looking for width here too. Now, I know we're all still in shock at how good C-Bum actually looks, and maybe we're not being completely objective here, but by the looks of it, Chris Bumstead just won the first three poses in this matchup. Between Martin and Shaun, I like Shaun's side leg more, but Martin is bigger and has the better chest, so I would probably have him in second. Back double biceps, and indeed from the back C-Bum gets exposed. Now he's beating Matthias, who's a far last in this pose in my opinion. He simply doesn't have the back thickness and his glutes and hams look a bit underdeveloped in comparison to the others. Then I think Chris is clearly third in this pose as he can't go against those other two when it comes to the back thickness and overall muscularity. I also believe C-Bum lacks the width in this pose. Martin is known for not being wide, and he beats C-Bum with overall width here. Between Martin and Shaun, I would actually have Shaun over him here. Shaun's back is proportionally wider and looks more balanced. Martin is definitely not as good as the Olympia. His glutes and hams were dry to the bone there, and here it's not the case anymore. Now this pose could still go to him. He still has a lot of overall size over Shaun, but personally I like Shaun more. If you are enjoying my content, consider subscribing. A big portion of you, around 73%, are not subscribed, and it would mean a lot to me to reach that 30k subs milestone by the end of this year. I appreciate it, guys. Back lat spread. I believe Martin distances himself from the rest of the pack, being clearly first, at least when it comes to the back development. CBum looks to have gained a bit of ground, while Shaun doesn't look as good as in the other back pose. Now, Shaun's back is still thicker and more developed for his proportions, but he might just give up too much overall size against CBum here. Matthias is again fourth for me from the back. Martin is a clear first, while Shaun and CBum battle for that second place. Let me know who you have winning between the two. Side triceps, and it's interesting seeing Chris Bumstead hitting these open class mandatories he didn't have to care about in classic. Now, this is again one of Martin's great poses, but his front stance is not ideal in my opinion. I think he's opened up too much. I also think he's been a bit too careless about the waist at this point, which might actually be a problem for him at this show. At least from what I saw at Prejudging, at times it looked like he was too sloppy with the waist, and against CBum especially, you cannot do that. Anyway, I still think he might be the favorite in this pose. He's got the best triceps in the lineup and he's the fullest overall. I believe CBum is in the conversation for first or second here. His triceps is pretty legit, his side leg too, his chest looks nice and full here, and he's got the tightest waist in the lineup. Between Shaun and Matthias, I would go with Shaun for being more polished overall, but it's not very decisive. Abs and thighs, Chris was a genius because he hit it a bit from the side when flexing the abs, as his obliques look more carved out than the actual abs, and then he simply shut the door on these guys with the vacuum. Now, I don't want to have double standards when it comes to the vacuum. I always said athletes should show the abs, but the judges made it clear that the vacuum is acceptable. And if we're judging who looks the best in this lineup here, vacuum included, CBum is definitely first place. And he might also be first with his abs flexed too, because once his thighs are great as well, all of the other guys' abs look bloated in comparison when flexed. Martin has some deeply cut and separated abs, but his stomach was too convex for my liking, if you know what I mean. So for me, all the other guys fight for second, while Chris wins the abs and thighs overall. Most muscular, and even though pound for pound Chris remains probably less muscular, at least compared to Shaun and Martin, but he compensates with a better frame, a much bigger overall frame and stature than Shaun, and better conditioning than Martin. Matthias is last again for me here. He looks good, but the other three are just better in my eyes. Pound for pound Shaun would win, but he still gives up too much size against the other two. CBum is the most polished, but Martin remains too big and full, and I think I would have him in first. However, his stomach doesn't look good at all here, and his lack of polish compared to CBum might make the judges see it differently. Any of these three could win this pose, and it's not a tiebreaker at all for me. And I say this because aside from the back poses, CBum was in the conversation for winning the side triceps and the most muscular, even though maybe not clearly being in a tight contest for that first place. However, when it comes to the other four poses, the front double, the front lat spread, the side chest and the abs and thighs, he was the clear winner, and by far I would say. There's no mistake in my mind that after analyzing this HD footage, Chris is the clear winner of the prejudging. As far as the other three, based on how the judges moved them on stage, check out my last video to see all that. Matthias looked to be in the conversation for third or even second, but after my analysis, I have him in fourth here. And then between Martin and Shaun, it's kind of close. Martin has the overall size on him, but Shaun has the conditioning, with Martin actually not being quite on, and there's also the stomach issue with Martin that I wouldn't ignore. Yet still, I would have Martin in second place, but a far second battling for that spot, while CBum is the clear winner for me in this prejudging.